I think I finally know what the feeling is of seeing a gothic Tim Burton film back in the 90s, and that is because Zelda Williams crafted a very unique gothic love story here within Lisa Frankenstein. Yes, I said Zelda Williams. She directs this, as well as it's written by Diablo Cody, and it stars the likes of Kathryn Newton and Cole Sprouse. If you don't know what Lisa Frankenstein is, this is the coming-of-rage love story about a teenager and her crush who happens to be a corpse, and after a set of horrific circumstances brings him back to life, the two embark on a journey to find love, happiness, and a few missing body parts. Now, honestly, I didn't know much of going into this movie. I knew who directed it, wrote it, and I knew who starred in it, and I thought just from the surface level that, oh, okay, this could be cute. But it might not be my cup of tea. And while I don't think this film is perfect by all means, I do think that it is quite damn delightful, enjoyable, even with all of its messy moments. And I'm excited to talk about Lisa Frankenstein today. I think a lot of you guys are going to quite enjoy this one, and I think in two ways what I could see this end up being is a new cult classic of some sorts, where maybe a lot of audience members just don't understand the film, a lot of critics might not, and then later down the road people are just gonna be like, do you remember Lisa Frankenstein? That was a very underrated movie. And then there's gonna be the other half that maybe I'm wrong and the reception is great for this movie and people already like it, and it's a brand new gothic classic film and a lot of people in this are gonna blow up one day. I'm not sure, because the last time Diablo Cody did a horror film, that was Jennifer's Body, and it felt like at the time not a lot of people loved it, but over the last few years, it's just really grown into this cult classic love, and I love to see that because I've always liked the movie. Like I mentioned, make sure to leave your thoughts down below on Lisa Frankenstein. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? As well as make sure to hit that like and subscribe button for more movie and TV content over here on a daily basis. With every movie review, the main thing I like to start with is talking about my pros, and starting with my biggest pro is Zelda Williams' direction. Now, this is Robin Williams' daughter. I'm not sure if she's ever directed anything before. I probably should have done some research before that, but if this is her directorial debut or whether this is another feature film from her, Zelda did a fantastic job crafting this movie. From a production design to the aesthetic of what she's trying to capture within the late 80s is absolutely bombastically beautiful in this. And like I mentioned off the top, it kind of gave me the feeling of watching old school Tim Burton films such as Edward Scissorhands, Beetlejuice, and again that goes from the prosthetics to the makeup to again the production design and to in general the entire vibe of it. And I knew instantly from the start of this movie within the opening credits, which a lot of films don't have opening credits where it goes through who's this, who's that, and all this stuff. The way that entire opening credit scene was crafted felt like something that was again taken from the 90s, and it feels like something that we just never get nowadays. But it started out with that, and I went, oh, this might be something a little unique. And I find the film to be overall very unique to itself. I think Zelda Williams, what she crafts so delightfully in here is making a character that in some way, shape, and form is very much has a lot of trauma to herself, but it's a character that you easily fall for, understand for, want to cheer for, and I found myself easily falling in love with her. And even this weird relationship that she has with this monster, even though it is not all love and romance within them. It's more of a friendship in some way, shape, and form that kind of can form into that. And that's actually one of the things that really surprised me was the approach that they took to this corpse. The corpse can't talk. The corpse, that's the noises it makes. For me, that's an interesting approach to have. Because Cole Sprouse, someone who I've grown up watching since like the Zack and Cody days, he, for me, gave a really good performance in here because it's all mannerisms. It's all movement. And it really plays off into Kathryn Newton, who, the second we meet her character, she's someone who has a lot of trauma to her, doesn't say a lot of words, doesn't really talk, is kind of just taken back by people, abused in some way, shape, and form. But then she meets someone who's dead, and she's the one that has to do most of the talking, and she opens up. And I find that we always find love at the most inconvenienced places of our lives, and also like in the most random parts of our lives. And I think Zelda Williams, while the film has a lot of messaging and certain things that I'll talk about in a second, I do think that Zelda Williams, what she was able to craft and direct from the script by Diablo Cody, really crafted a direction that was surprisingly joyful for me. And again, was not expecting that. Alongside this, I think the idea of this all is really flared into a more original concept due to Diablo Cody's writing in here. Not everything works within Diablo Cody, but I did like the sensibilities and where you actually start to see how the story's coming along, specifically with the missing body parts, I thought was quite charming. I talked about Cole Sprouse, but I definitely want to mention a little bit more about Kathryn Newton, who I thought was absolutely stupendous in here. And I've been a little bit mean towards Kathryn Newton. I wasn't the biggest fan of what they gave her to do in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, but ever since before that, I thought she was such a star. Freaky really showed me like, damn, this girl can do anything, and Lisa Frankenstein's kind of that same way. In a weird way, this actually might be one of my favorite performances by her yet. Honest to God, there's one part where she's dressed up in this, and she looks straight like Helen Bonham Carter in many of the Tim Burton films, and I was just like, is that the vibe she's going for? Maybe, maybe not, I don't know, but that's what it reminded me of. And Kathryn Newton kind of just showcases here which elements and how many different personas she can play to in a film, and I was really taken back by that and loved it. Again, it is really much Cole Sprouse and Kathryn Newton's movie, and their chemistry, their relationship, their friendship, that's the crux of this all, and that's what was delightful to watch. Sometimes this film, I mean, you're either on board or you're not, and I think that's a big part of this, and I will say, I noticed quite a few people leave my screening. And I just think that's because people didn't know what to expect. I'm one of the people that will give a film its whole entire thing. I didn't really know what to expect from this movie, and it kind of charmed me and delighted me. But I think a lot of people expected something a little bit more modern, and the film is very cheesy. It's very kooky, it's very weird, and it sometimes has a lot of tonal issues, which I'll talk about, but it's not what you're expecting, and I kind of dug that. Because I think a lot of the times when we go and see gothic films like this, it's never an homage or a love letter to old school films like that. It's trying to do something new in today's standard, and this kind of had an homage to so many different pieces of horror from the 90s that I was very much appreciative of. I think it's in some ways a love letter to 90s Tim Burton films. I think in some way it's a love letter to classic monster movies such as Frankenstein, Creature from the Black Lagoon, all sorts of things like that. I think it's also a love letter to video nasties at times, and specifically a lot of different cheesy horror films that you would find on the random section of Blockbuster when you're scrolling down the aisle. And for me, that is some of the best aspects of Lisa Frankenstein, and actually was the reason that I did start to fall for this movie. The aesthetic itself is the best aspect of the movie, hands down. That's where I do want to talk about my issues, because I think the film has tonal issues for sure. And while I think for a majority of it I could smile and smirk at it, the one big aspect that really took me back was sometimes it tries to get really serious. And I look at one primary scene between Kathryn Newton and Liza in here, the sister relationship that they have. There's one towards the end that for me was like the crux of their relationship and the crux of like Kathryn Newton's development as a character, and same with Taffy's, but I felt it was really out of left field for how serious that moment felt, and I kind of wish at times the movie just kind of dove a little bit deeper into the more serious bits. The rest of the film doesn't really have any of those. It's really over the top, heightened for the dramatic effects, and this is the only one that never really felt like that. I also think that there's this whole backstory to Kathryn Newton's character that is kind of like Chekhov's gun. They develop it, they say what's going on, and then they never touch into it more. And I understand that maybe that wasn't the piece of the story that they were supposed to do, and maybe that's just my dumb brain going, well, you put that there, but you never elevate it or touch on it again, and you think it could go one place, but it never does. And I'm trying really hard not to spoil it, even though you find out in like the first 10 minutes. I understand what they were going for. I could see some people being pissed off at that. The more I've thought about it, the less I'm less annoyed about it, because I understand what it did for her as a character and what it makes us believe in within this relationship and why Kathryn Newton's character is so weird. But it's something that I think could bother people. But really, when it comes down to in the end of the day, I thought it had tonal issues. I think the film overall just sometimes doesn't know what it wants to be in terms of a story. But I can't deny that I didn't have fun with Lisa Frankenstein. I can't deny that I didn't feel delighted by it. And in fact, the more and more I talk about the movie, the more I like it. sometimes I come on here and I don't really know how I'm feeling, and it's kind of feeling like a mixed bag. And even though there are probably multiple other things that other people will complain about within this film, I kind of just found that this film ate. I know that's like a very stupid terminology, but that's something my sister says, and it kind of feels that way. It's an enjoyable gothic romance that made me laugh, made me smirk, sometimes made me cringe. Do not get me wrong. It is sometimes cheesy, over the top, and a little bit too much for me. But for all of its moments that did that, it kind of just pulled back. And overall, I really like Lisa Frankenstein, and I could easily recommend it, I think, if you're looking for something fun and a little bit something different to go and watch for Valentine's Day this weekend. So with all that said, I'm gonna give Lisa Frankenstein a B-. One more little nitpick I did have with this is some of the editing I found towards the back half felt a little bit amateurish, personally, specifically in its ending and the way that it kind of ends itself. But that's such a nitpick. I'm very excited to hear your guys' thoughts on this one. I genuinely have not talked to anyone who's seen the damn movie, so I don't know anyone's thoughts leaving this film. I literally came home, sat down, so it's going to be quite a surprise to see what people think about this movie. Maybe I'm crazy, maybe I'm wrong, I'm curious. Let me know down below in the comment section. Thank you so much again for watching this, and of course, until next time, stay classy.